Welcome back to the Mythic Dungeon International. If you'd like to check out some awesome in-game toys and support WoW Esports, be sure to check out the Transmorpher Beacon or Hoarder Alliance fireworks linked in the description below. Proceeds will go to the prize pools for the Grand Finals, Global Finals, at the end of the year. I'm Jack, and joining me on the desk right now, we've got Sloot, Nagura, and Sours for another rematch between the two Titans of the East in Battle for Champion and Team D. Throughout these entire tournament, throughout the entire MDI, these teams have traded wins constantly and traded off who's going to be winning. So right now, they're tied for points in the standings, and they really want to be able to get that first place seeding in the East here, Sours.
Yeah, I'm not very impressed with Team D this week. The first week, I was like, okay, Team D is sick. Like, these guys are definitely better than Battle for Champion. I was convinced of it. And then the second week, they weren't playing as hot, or maybe Battle for Champion was just playing better. And then I was like, okay, Battle for Champion, they're definitely, like, they've earned this win over Team D this time. They have played superior. And in a dungeon like Underrot, which can be so lethal, teaming Grievous, Tyrannical, we've seen it claim the life of so many teams. They no longer have their Get Out of Toldagor free card in here, so it's going to have to come down to playing superior.
They really will have to get out of this little slump. I think it'd be fair to be able to call that Team D is kind of experiencing if they want to be able to beat Battle for Champion in this series, as we started off on Underrot.
And it looks like Twitch chat, Nagura, as well, is favoring the side of Battle for Champion. Not surprising to see. They've had a really solid performance this week. And Team D certainly, not the Team D we've grown to love in the past few weeks, but nonetheless, both teams out the get-go here are pulling the rather aggressive pull at the start that we've actually seen claim the lives of healers and tanks quite many in both of the cups, both regions of the cups. And right off the bat, there we go. We see Umunk already falling on the side of Team D.
Yeah, we actually see Battle for Champion, Jack using Tree Form and Tranquility, using both of the strong 3-minute cooldown straight at the get-go here on this very first difficult pull, as you mentioned. On top of Grievous, you also have teaming, so there's, of course, more mobs that you need to pull at the very start, too. And I just want to mention that this is a time trial dungeon, and both those teams got the #1 plus the #2 spot, and there were only a fraction of a second between those two teams. So 18 minutes, 39 seconds for both of the teams.
That is quite the conundrum, as Battle for Champion is now at 13% trash, heading over to the Mask. Both of them likely will be proccing the first Reaping Wave into Elderly Axe of the first boss. Team D here just a bit behind right now, as they're still chewing through the Matron trash here. They're focusing damage on the Blood Priest, wanting to make sure they kill that before dragging the rest of the trash over to the Mask. Double Blood Priest is an absolute nightmare, and it's very easy to miss one of those Dark Reconstitution casts, which will heal one of the random mobs up to max health. So if you have that happen on the Matron, or especially the Mask, it's going to lead to a team wipe. So the team's playing it a bit safe here. A lot of damage coming in on the Ab right now, though, just dips to 6% health and manages to stabilize, though.
It's just so much damage on the healers here, as they're the only range, and they're baiting the charge from the Matron on them all the time. And then on top of that, you get the Spears cast from the other mobs, from the Headhunters, and you also get the net, which also does damage. You can shapeshift out of the net to avoid the damage from it, but there's so many abilities to cast, and shapeshifting is a global cooldown that you don't always can spend if you have to heal the tank.
Both teams doing the exact same thing, proccing that Reaping and running over to the boss. Tanks making sure that they jump in front quickly to get that first free spell reflect on the boss, chunking health down by around 3-4%, so a huge amount of damage reflected there. Battle for Champion did beat them to the chase, though, and has their Bloodlust popped about 6 seconds prior to Team D. Both teams will have to make sure that they dodge around the Shadow Smashes from the Lost Souls, and especially the Green Swirlies. We've seen a lot of teams constantly get hit by these Green Swirlies today. Certainly don't want that damage reduction with how tightly raced these two teams are going to be.
Hey, definitely gonna watch out now. One problem is that you, of course, need to constantly interrupt the Apogee and the boss. So if you get Swirlies on top of them, at some point you just have to take the Swirly and interrupt, because it's, of course, you need to interrupt it, because if it's not, then the tank might just get one-shot by one of those casts. So you definitely, that's why the Reaping on top of it is a little bit dangerous, but both of those teams did manage to finish up the Reaping waves now. And one thing to note as well is that if you have those ranged Reaping Souls that constantly cast Grave Bolts, it might take the Spell Reflect from the tank if it's being casted on him, and then he can't Spell Reflect the Blood Bolt anymore, as Long almost got one-shot by one of the casts going through.
Yeah, I mean, Long just completely misplayed his his Spell Reflect there. It's only a 5-second duration. He popped it way too early, so it actually wore off by the time the Blood Bolt went through and chunked him down. It actually did kill him, technically. He did proc his Blunsomni's Bargain Trinket, so he's not going to have that available for the dangerous amount of trash coming up in Kragmaw's room right now. So huge misplay there by Long. They managed to dodge a bullet, though. One death on the board still for them. They haven't used that Battle Res, of course. That was earlier in the dungeon with Umunk going down. Battle for Champion just cruising on through right now as they down Elderly Axa and get ready to move on and stealth into Kragmaw's room.
Yeah, so we see this Shroud coming out for most of the teams here just because on teaming you have a triple maggot pack here that you really don't want to deal with. So that's why we see the Shroud coming out straight into Kragmaw's room, and now we see those big pulls. Now we've seen teams struggle with these pulls before as the healers die to the fixates and getting aggro, so definitely got to watch out for these pulls because there's so many mobs that are dangerous and need to be controlled and interrupted and stunned.
Swarmers are especially on the danger list here right now. They have the Sonic Screech that will do a pulsing AoE damage and also interrupt spell casting. Not to mention, of course, we also have the flowers there that need to have their Decaying Mind interrupted. We have just the Goose area denial on the ground. We have the Maggots with their frontal as well. So certainly a lot of babysitting needed here, as Nagura stated. But definitely the Bloodstormer is the most dangerous of them because the tank just can't really help with that outside of trying to safeguard here and there. They do pure shadow damage, and they're just a mess to deal with while the tank already needs to have a lot of attention from the healer. We already saw Long getting quite low in there as he jumped and pulled everything together. Battle for Champion has procced their second Reaping now and combined it with some of the Lashers on the side. Always trying to make as efficient use of it as possible. Bloodstormer Screech going out on the side right now, though.
Yeah, the Screech is one of those things that sometimes just go through because it does interrupt your cast if it goes through, but there's only one healer that can be interrupted. The rest is melee, so it's not a huge deal, but it also does AoE damage. Now, there's other casts that are more important to interrupt, and at some point you just don't have any interrupts left for the Screech, so that's why we sometimes see it go through, but it can be dangerous on top of just other damage, especially the Fixate coming through. And Team D just slightly behind compared to Battle for Champ, and you see the Rogue just dropping so low as he does have to Fixate on him, and Loom dying!
If only he had access to that trinket from earlier that he misplayed on the boss, so he goes down. They finally use their battle res, and Team D gets Long back up, but he's not going to have aggro on all of the Reaping that's randomly putting stacks of that Reaping Soul debuff on players. Umunk unfortunately goes down as well. There's a Blood Swarmer running around the side, just meleeing players. Baby Pig gets down to 3%, procs the Cheat Death and goes down as well. An absolute nightmare here for Team Deplete right now is the version of the team that we're getting as they struggle to stabilize everything. Mogtim getting frontal from the Maggot right now, going down. Ab gets Decaying Mind with stuns you until you're healed, and that is all she wrote for Team D as they have a full team wipe. Long doing what he can by popping his shield wall. Avatar comes up as well, looking to desperately try to finish up some of this trash right now. Now, he might be able to do it. The Warriors do a lot of damage. The rest of the team that can stealth has released and is trying to get back to them, but Long will be joining them and going 6 feet under right now as they have a full team wipe and Battle for Champion about to proc their third Reaping.
This is such a disaster for Team D. On these pools, if you have any sort of death coming in, everything is just going to fall apart because you're going to miss some interrupts, you're going to have other problems, and the tank dying especially. It's so hard for tanks to get the aggro back if they lose everything from dying. So even if when the Battle Res came up immediately from the Rest Druid, he just had such a hard time getting aggro back, and the damage dealers were just dying over and over because of the aggro. Battle for Champ, on the other hand, having such a clean run, 0 deaths so far, proc the Reaping Wave, and they're on top of Kragmaw now.
Yeah, Kragmaw. Now, we're in a tyrannical setting. You know, we always preach how Kragmaw is particularly dangerous during the Tantrum, and that is certainly the case, but just want to make sure that you kill off any trash and remaining residual Reaping mobs that you have before the Tantrum, so that Jack, in this case, on the side of Battle for Champion, can have full focus on just healing the group as they run around stomping the ticks before they spawn into full-fledged mobs, something that every single one of Kragmaw's 3 main abilities spawns on the ground. Here's the first, not Reaping, but here's the first Tantrum on the side of Battle for Champion. We do get that Tree of Life out, and he's trying to get the team as healthy as possible before they snowball into a full 4 stack of Grievous.
Yeah, Grievous is such a dangerous affix to have here in this boss, especially in a tyrannical setting, because the Tantrum just does so much AoE damage, and once the Tantrum is over, in theory there's no more AoE damage for the group coming in, so in theory you could be focusing on the tank heal, but because of the Grievous, you need to make sure everyone gets up to 100% HP to get rid of the Grievous stacks, and then on top of that you also have to deal with the tank just getting so much damage on top of Grievous too, so definitely a very difficult fight to heal for Jack as he just struggles to get rid of this Grievous here.
Yeah, just how much trouble he's having finally got rid of the melee's Grievous by hitting them above that 90% threshold, and then himself. The tank the entire time has been sitting in 4 stacks Grievous just because of the boss melees as well. And by the time he just barely got everybody out of Grievous except for the tank, the Tantrum has now started again. He does not have Tree of Life available this time, but has Tranquility and is popping that quite dangerous low amount of health on the tank right now. Still hasn't broken out of that 4 stack of Grievous, as once again we see support with Ignore Pain coming up in that kind of absorb bubble design on the player's frame right now, just doing what he can to mitigate and help the healer, help him get out of that 4 stack. Team D not giving up, though. They have pulled their 3rd Reaping Wave on top of Kragmaw, but are, I mean, just immense amounts of percent behind.
Yeah, definitely. And Battle for Champ has been lucky as well with the ability combination here. Now, in Kragmaw, if you do get the charge right after the Tantrum instead of getting the frontal, then you have a little bit more time in between the Tantrums to actually DPS the boss. So you definitely want that RNG to happen instead of getting the frontal first. So good RNG for Battle for Champion coming in right after this charge. They will get another Tantrum though, and Jack is out of cooldowns at this point. No Trank, no Tree of Life, so let's see if he can manage to keep the group alive here.
We do see the rogues popping their feint, anything they can to help mitigate some of the damage from the AoE pulses from Kragmaw coming in right now. They do manage to survive, but Jack is going to have his hands full right now trying to get the rest of the team out of Grievous. The boss is certainly not low enough that they could just commit and kill it and have everybody drop a fish feast at the end and get out of that Grievous stack. So he's doing what he can, popping those regrowths and getting a potion here to get some extra mana in so that he can try and finish off the fight. They might have one last Tantrum at the very end of the fight, but they should be able to commit through it and just finish the boss out without having to stomp any of the ticks. Team D trying to hold their ground right now as they're 7 deaths behind, and Kragmaw's only now hitting 55%.
Yeah, interesting that he chose to use his potion here as his Innervate was back up. He just used his Innervate, so in theory he didn't need to use the potion. He could have just went in Catform DPS the boss a little bit because Innervate was definitely enough. He did not need the extra, but a better safe than sorry, I guess, for Battle for Champion as they down Kragmaw and they're are going to continue to the next trash pack. Now we've seen these pulls before where you just kind of shroud past the skeletons and then pull the danger noodle on top of some skeleton bags.
Yeah, we are indeed entering the pasta factory here as the team indeed grabs what trash they can. Actually, no, they end up blinding the menacing Macaroni on the side there and move over to the rest of the Guardians. Now, they're probably actually just going to straight up skip that on the side with advantage from the Rogue that blinded, and they're going to pull the Defilers plus Guardians. The Death Speaker has the second blind from the Rogue applied to it, and they actually missed one of the Raised Dead casts, so I saw an extra Guardian just spawn on the side of Battle for Champions, but that is a grievous error right now. So much damage coming in on the Prot Warrior here for Battle for Champion. Does not have his Bond Zombie's Trinket available. He has his Spell Reflect up right now what he can, but they need to babysit those Defilers. It requires 2 interrupts per, so they had to probably let the Raised Dead cast go through so that they had their interrupts available for the Defilers. So just huge amounts of tank damage coming in. His Team D is now at 22% with Tranquility popped on their respective Tantrum for Kragmaw.
Yeah, his cheap dash drink is just barely off cooldown, but it was so close of him dying there. We saw the Ring of Peace come out of the Windwalker, definitely saving his life there at the very last second. But having those double Defilers and 1 Death Speaker, definitely very difficult trash bag, especially for the tank, as you can see. And if there's any sort of interrupt that you're missing, that can cause disaster for your group, as there's Shadow Bolt volleys that need to be interrupted. There's also the Withered Curse, which if it goes through, leaves a debuff behind on everyone, decreasing your HP and decreasing your damage. So you definitely want to interrupt all of those abilities. But Battle for Champion proccing the 80% Reaping Wave and pulling it on top of Sancha. They do not have their Bloodlust available, and this is something that is very difficult. So let's see how they're dealing with this.
Yeah, there's something we see typically from a lot of teams, and Nagura, you know, you mentioned earlier that we do talk to these teams, and one of the hardest pulls they say in this dungeon is actually combining this 4th Reaping Wave with Sancha. It's just very, very dangerous. Fortunately, they've already dealt with the double Defiler, so that's usually what starts to spiral things out of control, and most of the Reaping has been essentially deleted as it came in with max amounts of damage support for AoE coming in from especially the 2 Rogues and the Prot Warrior here are able to get proper dispels on the tank here from Jack, and everything is nice and stable right now. Spore Caller Sancha is hitting 75%. Second round of upheaval is hitting the melee right now, and the last mushrooms have been shield wall popped here from the Prot Warrior, and we're going to see the first Festering Harvest cast.
Yeah, they just deleted that Reaping Wave. It died so quickly, especially with just this huge AoE damage coming out of the Rogues and the Prot Warrior. So dealing with this Reaping Wave very quickly is so important to give the tank less damage on him, less dots, because this boss alone already does a lot of tank damage if you have the shockwaves constantly coming in. So you definitely got to watch out for tank tank damage here. Now, his Bomzani trinket, the cheat dash trinket, is available again, so he's one more thing to rescue himself in case something does happen, but you really want to save it for later on.
Bit of mismanagement here from Team D that they're trying to just get as close as possible, but they mismanaged their interrupts right off the bat with these two defilers, and we can see that curse that's just about to expire from the players right now. Wither and Curse was allowed to channel for a bit, and every time it stacks, you deal 2% less damage, so somebody mismanaged their kicks there, and they've already fallen a bit behind on Sporecaller Zancha. They're looking to kill their last defiler and then pull the Death Speaker along with their 4th Reaping Wave on top of Zancha, but they have their work cut out for them as Battle for Champion is now at 39% on Sporecaller Zancha, 0 deaths on the board, and has already dealt with their 4th Reaping.
Yeah, Battle for Champ definitely ahead at this point. Just having such a clean underroad run so far. 0 deaths coming in, just everything looking so clean and so fast by Battle for Champ. Right after this boss, you still have to deal with 20% trash, and there's going to be one very specific difficult pull where you pull a Danger Noodle on top of some skeletons with a Death Speaker, with a Defiler, and one of those bigger ads that constantly casts Frontal Fear and the Tentacles. So that's one more pull where things can go wrong, and we've seen things, we've seen healers die in the past, and then a whole team just having to wipe because of that. So definitely things can go wrong in the future, but let's be honest, Battle for Champ just having such a clean run.
I'm sorry, I was just wiping some drool away from my mouth at the thought of mass failures on that pull, so we'll have to see if Battle for Champion are able to pull it off here. Sporecaller Zancha, 13% right now, and indeed they will combine a lot of a Death Speaker, likely a Defiler, a Faceless Corruptor, along with one of those Raging Rigatonis, and the Guardians on the side with that one Death Speaker. But Team D, a lot of damage going out right now. It seems they didn't soak one of the mushrooms. Trank is trying to save the day right now, but it's just not enough as Baby Pig goes down, and Mog procs his cheat death. They do have the Battle Res available and have managed to stabilize right now, but that was certainly a blunder on the side of Team D. It seems that they're just really shaken up right now. They're trying to do what they can to catch up, but all the play is just so sloppy. So an extra death on the board for them. Their last battle res has been used, and they're just looking to chew through the remaining half of the boss right now, as Battle for Champion has already pulled all of the Reanimated Guardians and the Death Speaker, the entire mob that I just said, along with this ferocious Fettuccine.
Team D seems like they have Reanimated Guardians here, which they got created by the Death Speaker casting Raise Dead, I'm pretty sure. Which, of course, those Guardians don't give any sort of percentage because it was casted by the Death Speaker. So huge mistakes by Team D, just not interrupting the cast and getting additional assets they're not supposed to be getting. On top of that, just not soaking all the mushrooms, getting debuffs on everybody. And Ab is completely out of mana. 0 mana left for Ab as he sits down to drink to get some mana back to be able to heal the rest of the fight, as the boss is still on 30%. And Battle for Champion doing this difficult pull that I've been talking about earlier, but they're doing it very cleanly.
Yeah, and the problem is with Ab needing to sit down and drink is now he's let everybody snowball into a 4-stack of Grievous, so he's made his job even harder, unfortunately, because of the damage that went out with these mismanaged mushrooms earlier on Sporecaller Zancha. Battle for Champion running down to their final 2 Corruptors now. Based on the percentage that they have, they should only need to kill one of these Danger Noodles, plus the remaining 5% will come from the 2 Faceless Corruptors, and it will lead them to their last Reaping on top of the boss for what hopefully for them will be an almost, pretty much actually flawless run. 0 deaths on the board. Team D right now having a lot of trouble with Long. Ab is just constantly pouring mana into him right now as another Festering Harvest hits, and Long eats one of the mushrooms as well. Ab is once again completely out of mana, just cannot seem to get Long out of that 4-stack of Grievous, and the rest of the group is starting to ramp up stacks as well, as Upheaval is about to hit them. Sporecaller Zancha at 1% finally goes down, and everybody's emergency going to hit down a Fish Feast and start eating away to heal up and get that mana back.
That was such a... They almost wiped there at the very end for Team D, but they did manage to finish it off. But it's too little too late, as Battle for Champ is already on the way to down those 2 Corruptors here, proccing their 100% Reaping Wave. And now all they need to do is wait until this door opens, then they're going to get teleported down into the last boss room. The whole Reaping is going to teleport on top, and then they're going to pull the boss with their Bloodlust available to them as well. And still, 0 deaths. They have 2 Battle Rests available. There's not that many things that can stop them at this point.
No, absolutely nothing can stop them. They do go downstairs. 5th Reaping Wave has proc. No surprise to see it all mass pulled together along with the Unbound Abomination, final boss of the dungeon, and the Warriors just going insane along. Everybody's going insane right now. Huge amounts of AoE damage coming out of the group as the once again the Reaping Wave, just like the 4th Reaping Wave on top of Zancha, gets absolutely deleted from the encounter. They move around together in a nice circular pattern as always to make sure that those spores don't become a problem, and they keep aiming the breath in the same direction. At this point, they just need to make sure they keep cleansing their damage over time accruing stats stacks on the fight along with the aura given from Titan Keeper Hezrel, and just kind of chew through the boss's energy, really, not his health, to spawn those blood visages.
Yeah, so the energy, instead of HP, you actually increase the energy once you hit the boss. And once it reaches 100 energy, you see the blood visages spawn, as you saw one in the back there. And once 2 of them die, you get rid of the HP of the boss. So in theory, you have to kill 3 times 2 of those blood visages to kill the boss, so 6 in total.
My God, I wouldn't have been able to do that math in my head, not in a million years. But 6 it is, as Nagura's called it. 2 of them has been deleted, and 6 minus 2, last I checked, was 4. Jack will have to make sure about that just later. I know you're quite surprised. Battle for Champions, 67% on Unbound Abomination. Team D doing everything they can to try and catch up. They're dealing with their 2 last corruptors here, but they still need to kill those, proc their reaping, go downstairs, Bloodlust, combine that with the boss, and somehow beat Battle for Champion by 40 seconds because of the 8 deaths on the board. That is not happening with such a well-trained Battle for Champion team. I mean, Battle for Champion, you know, they've had their hiccups. We saw their kind of motherload issues earlier, but like they just have, when they have clean runs, they have clean runs. I mean, they just destroy this dungeon.
Yeah, most definitely. Battle for Champ just playing so cleanly. And Team D, what do they have to do at this point to get back into the game? Like, I think it's just their mentality just struggling at this point, as they almost lost the game earlier to Black Mamba. So they just need to have a reset, really, and just think about this series, because Team D has won against Battle for Champion in the past. We know they're a good team, and we know they can do it. they're just not playing up to their game currently.
No, they're not. And maybe they just don't care at this point, because they know they're making land. And who knows what's going on through their minds and in voice comms right now, but nonetheless, they are putting up the fight that they need to put halfway through their Bloodlust as they're working on the Unbound Abomination. But as always, as we say here, just too little too late, as Battle for Champion is working towards spawning the final 2 Visages, which have spawned on the side, and Titan Keeper Hezrel will be deleting those for the players, allowing Battle for Champ to very dominantly take the first map 1-0.
Yeah, Battle for Champion just having such a good game here. 0 dabs and super fast time by Battle for Champ as they win the first map.
Yeah, impressive, and playing like the champions they want to be as they take game 1 in the series. Underrod's been that dungeon time and time again here, Sours. We keep on harping on it, but it's true. Kragmaw's room has just been the bane of too many teams' existence.
Yeah, the trash in that room is just so lethal. So a big thing about this dungeon and most BFA dungeons in general is that you can generally only pull like 4 mobs at a time that require a kick, just because of the nature of how dangerous most spells that need interrupting are. And so when you do big trash pulls like Team D try to do in this dungeon, and you decide to do it also with reaping, which is important for going fast, it can be very easy to just have like a terrible outcome. And so Team D, they even had a kind of a bad start in this dungeon. You see, they had 1 death when they killed Elderly Axa, and Battle for Champion, they didn't have any issues whatsoever as they progressed through the dungeon. Jack doing a great job even managing Grievous on Kragmaw, and Kragmaw's a boss that Grievous can very easily get out of control on. And again, even on the Unbound Abomination, another boss that if healed poorly, Grievous can get quite out of hand. Jack had no issues whatsoever with it, and we saw when, yeah, you especially, Jack, and we saw when Team D was even doing the 3rd boss in this dungeon, they were struggling a lot with Grievous, and Healer was completely tapped on mana, so this was really just not the affix combination that Team D is very capable at handling in this dungeon, apparently.
It also kind of seemed, and maybe Nagura, you could talk about it a little bit more, in terms of cooldown usage, being able to see when Tree of Life was being popped, and not being able to like lean on Cultivation, for example, to help bring you a little bit out of Grievous. So if it wasn't timed properly in terms of cooldowns, it just set you so far behind.
Yeah, so I think Tree of Life is just something I don't like running on a Grievous week, so it's very interesting that they choose to run it all the time here, especially Battle for Champ really likes Tree of Life, most likely because they're doing those big pulls, and once you just rotate the cooldowns, right? You do 1 big pull, use 3 for that one, and then for the next big pull, you have the Tranquility ready or something like that. But if as soon as you have more AoEs where you run out of cooldowns like Kragmaw, then it was where he was struggling, right? He had Trank for 1, Tree of Life for the other, but then you run out of cooldowns, and then you just don't have the Cultivation available to you, as you mentioned before, and then you're struggling. But they did manage by using the Innervate very last second and using that potion as well.
Yeah, which really brings us into Sour's clip on Kragmaw's room here.
Yeah, it's just a brutal wipe, unfortunately, for these guys, where you see they have all this trash that they're fighting, these disease lashers, along with all these risen souls, and you see how chunked Lung is getting there. So he just ends up going down to a big tick of the risen soul debuff, and then maybe a melee or two at the end of that. And as a result, right, he's going to lose all of his threat on all these mobs. And so now hell has broken out on the team. The monk goes down, followed very quickly by Baby Pig. And as with any trash pull like this, as soon as one or two DPS go down, the rest of the team, when mobs have this much health left, it doesn't really have the ability to kind of keep everybody else alive. And you see decaying mines get out. All of a sudden, all this damage everywhere that they just don't have. See, this Bloodstormer's coming back. He's wiping the blood off of his mouth because he was over there punching the healer to death. And there's nothing really they can do at that point. And Lung eventually just ends up bleeding out here, and it's just a horrendous defeat for these guys.
Interesting to see that people can punch with their mouth, Jack. But
you learn something new every day.
What I wanted to mention, and we've seen a lot in these dungeons, especially with the high caliber teams, with the high octane plays, is the smallest mistakes always come back to bite you in the butt. And this is exactly what happened with Lung here. He misplayed his spell reflect on Elderly Axa and procced his trinket as a result, and that trinket would have saved his life there and potentially have saved that pull in the first place. So everything just comes back.
Yeah, you think that if there was just the trinket proc, he gains a little bit more time for the healer to bring him back, that was it?
Yeah, I mean, the trinket proc, it was just prevented the death, so it could have gotten that extra second or two for a dispel, for just, getting a regrowth and whatever it may be. Even for Long himself, maybe he could have popped Last Stand if it was available, just to get that extra bit of health buffer. But not having that trinket there, I mean, it was just brutal off just a stupid misplay, really. Yeah,
and it wouldn't be the first time we've seen just one misplay early on in a dungeon come back to bite him, as you mentioned. That does bring us into game 2. So don't go anywhere, guys. You don't want to miss this one. Welcome back to the Mythic Dungeon International. In our grand finals, we've gone on to game 2, which will take us into Ataldazar. Battle for Champions up 1, and then Team D is going to really need to step it up on Ataldazar. Sours.
I'm going to make a prediction again. I want to see someone fall off the bridge. That's all I want. That's all I want in life is I want to see you're going to cover the bridge in blood. It's going to get really slippery. There's no guardrails on this bridge, and they're going to fall right off and lose the dungeon.
Do you want to see them fall off, or you want to see Rasan get healed by Sanguine?
Everything. That's what would come for the East bracket. These games are always so close in all the wrong ways, and that's what I love about watching these East bracket games. And I think that Ataldazar, Sanguine, Grievous is just a dungeon for something just remarkable to happen that you could never predict coming.
And the blood on the floor is probably from the mouth of the Bloodstorm. Someone earlier, right?
The right you are, Sloot. As we go into game 2 between Team D and Battle for Champion in our grand finals.
So let's see if Sours gets his wish of somebody falling off the bridge on the snap location here for the swords. But first, we're going to have to see both teams run up to the side and do the multi-juggernaut along with the Confessor and Augur pull. Hopefully the healers do know that they should jump up on the stairwell. But we're going to have to see Nagura. As was mentioned earlier, they don't want to kite too far from the stair area with the Sanguine because it could actually turn around and smack one of the melee when that Typhoon comes in.
We've actually seen, I think it was either Battle for Champ or Team D that didn't use this snap position in the past. But we see both healers this time around actually do using that snap position, so we don't have the Juggernauts use that charge ability. Now, one thing I mentioned before is, though, that if any of the melees are too far away from the Juggernaut, they might charge to them and just do huge amounts of AoE damage to their melee, so they definitely want to watch out for that one, as we've seen teams wipe to that in the past.
Battle for Champions just absolutely deletes this pack, but that's by virtue of the fact that Team D did not use their heroism here. So Battle for Champions still had about 8 seconds running on that. They run down the stairs right now and are getting ready with the sword pulls. The rogues pre-position themselves with that Tricks of the Trade as we see the Prot Warrior jump into position. No falling off the bridge just yet right now, as Shield Wall is pre-popped before these swords get in. Fortified swords, of course, doing a fair bit of damage to the tank since they're not allowed to jump away. Does well to move away before the Sanguine starts to hit down. Unfortunately, the Sky Screamer sits there for just a bit, gets a few ticks of the Sanguine, but you know what? That's the gamble you take when you try to do the snapping.
Team D just struggling at the end of this very first pull, as they didn't use their Bloodlust. It took much longer, and then the double Juggernauts were alive. Yumong just dropped low, then he was sitting in the Sanguine and just kind of dying to the Sanguine, and then they struggled to finish up the rest of the mobs as one of them healed up as well. But now they're finally done with it. They're doing this pull where they pull one of the Sky Screamers and engage the boss. Now, we've seen this go very wrong before, and the boss is also in a very wrong spot as well. He's really, really far away, and they might not be able to pull the boss from over there.
Yeah, well, hopefully it does work out for them. But yeah, Team D, of course, just because they move so much slower, the boss's pathing is just completely off for them, whereas Battle for Champion knew the timing they were getting involved in by having that heroism popped at the beginning of the dungeon. Team D also has that one death on the board. They didn't end up using the battle res for it, but they did have that death come over at the end of the trash pack that Nagura mentioned they were struggling with right now. Here comes the rest of the reaping for Team D right now, is dealing with it, and only now is Razan starting to round the corner on the far side as Ab runs off and tries to tag it for the rest of the group. Here it comes in, but Razan already down to 58% for Battle for Champion.
Yeah, Team D just, because it took them so long to finish up the first pack, the timing was completely off. Razan was in a wrong spot, everything just kind of going wrong for them. And Long actually dropped so low as he has to bleed from the boss on top of him, and then people are just getting fear left and right as well. And you see the Sanguine on the floor, the boss is standing so close to the Sanguine.
I just kind of,
yeah, exactly. I want Long to actually just drag the boss away from this, because this is giving me anxiety.
Well, that's probably why he's keeping it there, Nagura, knowing who stresses you out. You'll just be just as bald as I am by the end of this match. Oh, what a lovely sight that would be, wouldn't it? We'll work on that. Battle for Champion now down to 27, oh, sorry, down to 17% on Razan, while getting 27% trash count, because they are pulling the extra Sky Screamers from up top the stairs. One of the melees going and tagging it for the tank. The tank, of course, needs to stay positioned here, otherwise he risks resetting the boss. The boss very easily resets at the base of the stairs there. 4% now on Razan. Battle for Champion just gliding on through this dungeon right now as they finish off the first boss and immediately mount up, getting ready to move. And you said oof just because the Sanguine came down perfectly just as the boss died. Excellent calculation there from Battle for Champion.
Yeah, Battle for Champion just playing so well. Zero Devs, of course, doing everything just a little bit faster compared to Team D, as they're on their way to do this pretty huge trash pool. Now, you see some of the CC come in here on those honor guards, but they're killing the totem, so that means that they actually want to deal with the honor guard, because you don't have to deal with the totem if you don't want to kill them in the first place. Now, this is different of a pull that we've seen from other teams before. Usually, they just kind of want to ignore the honor guards because they're so difficult to deal with, especially because they do a huge amount of tank damage and a huge amount of AoE.
Yeah, and there's just so much damage coming in on the tank right now. Jack unfortunately started low health as well. I think he ate one of the shield bashes to the face. Certainly ate something to the face, because there are a few mobs in here, including the shield bearers and now the honor guard, that if they're not within proximity of the tank when they're casting either their rending tear or their shield bash, they'll just hit one of the closest other proximity targets. In this case, Jack was unfortunately the brunt of that, and he's just not able to heal out of this 4-stack of Grievous along with one of the two rogues. The tank's just having so much damage right now and is proccing low. I might have actually procced his cheat death drink. We'll have to see once they get out of this trash pack. Fortunately, did not manage to do that as they start to run off towards Volkal's platform. Team D doing a similar pull here with the honor guard. I'm not really sure what the hype of pulling the honor guard lately is. It's just one of the most dangerous mobs in this dungeon, along with the Colossi on the other side. But nonetheless, these teams are dedicated and married to this idea as Team D hits 27% trash. Battle for Champion has now pulled Volkal along with the second reaping.
Yeah, so Volkal, they try to shut out some of the reaping mobs off. Usually we see teams just be slightly before the 40% reaping wave as they engage Volkal. They don't actually trigger it. Usually they trigger the reaping wave with the next pack and then deal with it with the swords. So interesting route from Battle for Champion, just making sure they have the 40% before this. Now they shut melted some of them off, but you couldn't really get rid of all of them. So they have to deal with it in phase 1 here. And phase 1 really not that difficult, but there's a lot of AoE damage on everybody and everyone is spread out. So it's a lot more difficult for Jax to heal everybody because they can't stand in the efflorescence. The wild growth might not be hitting everybody because they're so spread out. And this is why the Grievous is stacking up on everybody.
Yeah, the Grievous plus that first disease tick, which is inevitable from Volkal. No matter how quick you interrupt it, you're going to get one of those first 3 stacks of the disease from Volkal's cast. So, of course, only the Monk can really dispel it here and does so on the Prot Warrior just to get a bit of extra safety in. But got a bit scary there for Jack. Indeed, as Nagura mentioned, they did spiral into a 4-stack of Grievous. Managed to mostly get out as Jack is still sitting on that 4-stack at 71%, trying to get back up to 90% so he can just stop focusing on himself and start focusing either on some damage or healing the tank up. But now the rogues are starting to snowball into that same effect. Team D right behind and doing what was mentioned earlier. They actually sit right below the second reaping pack because it's really just not very efficient to drag reaping on top of this first boss, on top of the second boss, excuse me, Volkal, as he's just spam healed by the totems in this first phase. So you're really just accruing a ton of dispels from the healer for absolutely no reason.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how they're going to change up their route later on, because they only got 2% more than Team D, but maybe there's actually something they can skip later on that Team D has to play to get this extra percentage. So we will see what happens later, but Battle for Champ about to downvote Cull here, and now they want to self-pass these mobs again using their second Shroud, and now it's going to be a double Stalker pull plus Witch Doctor pull, and this is something that we've seen teams wipe to before because those casters are just so dangerous.
These casters are very dangerous, and there are the stalkers that are, well, fortunately for them, at the bottom of the stairs. They do patrol up and down those stairs, so sometimes it can be quite annoying to find them and just get them in the pack, leave them right away. Here comes the first bulwark of Juju. Shockwave is interrupted, used to interrupt that for a Battle for Champion. They do well there. There are, of course, 2 shield bearers as an intimidating shout comes out from their prot warrior to make sure that it interrupts some of the spell casting. He might also be running the Azerite trait that absorbs some of their incoming damage after, so just a bit of defensive there on this, what is usually seen as one of the more difficult pulls in the dungeon from a trash perspective, especially in the fortified environment. 54% now as they well deal with that, and they start to run over to the next sword pack. Rogue's running ahead to Tricks of the Trade onto the tank as he shield wall and snaps it into position. No falling off the bridge yet, but huge amounts of damage coming in on the group right now. Some of the swords get a bit of leap, if I'm not mistaken, on the group as they're trying to get into position, so everybody's quite low. Cheat Death has proc for both Rogues as well.
And these double sword pulls are just so dangerous. We've seen teams before, Black Mamba, I believe, completely wiped to this one, or have the tank going down. We see one of the Skyscreamers getting a cast through because it's just standing there in the back and just not going away. He's standing in this Sanguine, constantly healing up and not being interrupted. Now we finally moved out of the Sanguine, but this is the problem. These are some of the dangerous things when you use these snapping spells, especially if you have Sanguine. Not only does the tank get so much damage, but sometimes the mobs are just standing there healing forever, and it's so hard for the team to get them back out.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the gamble you take with snapping in the first place. It's not exactly the most intended mechanic in the world, but players do take advantage of it, and it is allowed as per the rules here at the dungeon, so any kind of side effect that comes with it is at your own discretion. And didn't work out great for Battle for Champion there, but they did avoid any sort of crisis scenario like a full wipe as they rear up and pull the next double sword pull right now along with the Skyscreamer, try to get aggro on it, and looks like they're not going to be snapping this one, so they're pulling all the swords together along with their third Reaping Wave, just cleaving them all down. Huge amounts of AoE damage. I guess they just felt it didn't need to do it this time because they just had all their cooldowns ready for AoE, as Team D has down Volcall as well, and Long dropping so low right now. He has a Shadow Smash debuff on him, as well as does Ab from the Lost Souls from the Reaping Wave, the second Reaping Wave, and they're just struggling to heal everyone up right now as long as running around in circles. They have managed finally to kill the swords on the side, so most of the danger has been averted as long as the spells come out from Ab during this Reaping Wave, but pretty scary there. And again, they just got hit by one of the Lost Souls trying once again to snap the mobs into locations, so they're going to have 20% reduced max health for the remainder of that minute.
Insane amount of healing coming out of Ab here. As one of the cast goes through from the Skyscreamers, everyone is feared. They need to make sure that everyone survives here, as they're just struggling so much with this pull. But you see almost 50k HPS coming out of Ab here just to make sure everyone is healed, and that was super close by them, as Battle for Champ already on 77% are dealing with the Spire Gauntlet, hopefully not getting hit by it. And then we will see if they use their Bloodlust or not, because they still have 30 seconds on it, and usually we see teams using Bloodlust for this huge pull in the Priestess Alunza room.
And Long unfortunately procced his Cheat Death Trinket there, but you know, some of the reason why Ab had to do so much healing there was just poor play by the rest of the team, getting hit by Shadow Smashes, Cheat Death proccing left and right, interrupts not happening on the Fears, and Maw goes down here for Team D right now. Second death on the board, immediately one of the battle reses is used so he can help cleave down the rest of this fairly dangerous fortified pack right now, as it is combined with some Skyscreamers on their side. Long does not have access to his Cheat Death Trinket, so they have to make sure to heal him well and just kill this pack before he dies, quite frankly, because it is just almost unhealable amounts of damage coming in. You can see him struggle, just barely yo-yoing between 20 and 40% health, as Ab is doing nothing but pumping regrowths into Long right now, finally managing to stabilize him as the trash does fall. Battle for Champion has already procced their fourth Reaping, combined it with the trash and Priestess Allunes on their side.
This was such a clean pull coming in by Battle for Champ here, as they pulled this the whole room basically, except this one Augur there in the back, which is sapped, as you can see in the back right corner. But Battle for Champion just doing such a clean pull, and everything dying at the very same time. You saw the Ring of Peace come in perfectly. None of the mobs died earlier, because if you kill one mob earlier, you have the Sanguine spawn and mobs are healing. So perfectly controlled AoE damage out of Battle for Champion. Just very clean Sanguine management by them as they pull the boss here, and they only need this Augur that is seated in the back for the rest of the percentage, and then they only need the Sky Screamer, which they're most likely going to pull to Yasma.
Yeah, pull, and of course, just paralyze on the side there. And Jack doing an excellent job on damage control right now, getting the Untangle on the first Spirit of Gold. The second one has been paralyzed by their Windwalker, and they're just making sure to constantly tend to the Augur on the side that they will likely pull on top of Priestess Alunza sometime during after the second transfusion. A bit late there to grab his blood puddle, or I suppose black goop puddle on the ground for the Windwalker, so just a bit of extra damage lost on Priestess Alunza by not getting the first tick with the Reflect on the transfusion, but 10% on the board for her. The Augur has indeed been pulled on top of the boss. Well Ring of Peace out right before it died to make sure that there's no Sanguine healing on the boss, and they'll be moving over to indeed Yasma plus that final Sky Screamer.
Yeah, very clean run. So far, they have to finish up the last percentage. You see one of the rogues already going ahead because you want to trigger the RP to make sure the stairs are available to go to the last boss, Yasma. This is why the rogue is already there and mounted up on the way to go over to the waterfall. Now, they need 3%, as we mentioned earlier, which is going to be the last Sky Screamer they're pulling to the last boss room. Now, they will have to succeed in the corner somehow with either Incap by the Windwalker or Hibernate by the Rastadruid. And then at the very end of the fight, they will make sure to kill the Sky Screamer to not have to deal with the last Reaping Wave.
Yeah, should be no problem for them. I mean, this is just a flawless run coming out of Battle for Champion here. Both of these games have been absolutely stellar from them. They really just came to play here and claim that first seed and show that they are the best team in the East right now as the team finally moves up and pulls Yasma, the final boss of the dungeon. Bloodlust immediately popped for the team as the Sky Screamer, I don't think has managed to catch up just yet, but I do believe they pulled it. So, yeah, there it is on the side right now. So Paralysis coming in immediately on it, and they will be spawning their first round of spirits near the boss so that they can easily cleave it down.
Yeah, Team D, I mean, if you look at their deaths, they really only had 2 deaths, so not huge mistakes, but they're still just one whole boss behind at this point. They're still at Priestess Alunza, while Battle for Champ already on Yasma. They also saved their Bloodlust for Yasma at this point, so it's so much cleaner and so much faster by Battle for Champion. Definitely playing really well today, having those clean runs and really fast runs on top of that too. Now on Yasma, there's not that much that can go wrong, except the main mechanic, of course, of the boss, which are those spiders, as you can see. Sometimes they will go bigger and activate and they start fixating people, but this is why the boss is being guided kind of in a circle on the edge of the room, because the spiders will constantly follow and just kind of be stacked up. The more stacked the spiders are, the less of a problem they're going to be.
Yeah, so no problem here for Battle for Champion. Now, the other thing, of course, that could go disastrously wrong is spawning the Sanguine from the Sky Screamer under the boss, but they've shown that they can easily handle that mechanic as finally the Sky Screamer is indeed pulled for them. Yasma 35% on the board as Team D is only now running up the hill towards it.
Yeah, Team D actually getting hit by a bunch of spiders as they're walking up the stairs here. It's just not their day, really. Team D have shown in the past they're a world-class team, really, but today they just have those small mistakes over and over, getting hit by things, by spiders as they walk up the stairs. It's really just not their day on Team D side, as Battle for Champ just playing so much clean, and it's really their day today. As you can see, actually everyone dropping is really low because of the Soul Rend, but it shouldn't be a problem for Jack to make sure that all of them are healed up and the Grievous is gone, and it's on their way to win 2-0 against Team D and winning their 3rd cup here.
Yeah, so here they go right now as they look to finish off Yasma and claim a 2-0 victory over Team D, solidifying their place as first seed in the East and really showing that they can hang with the best in the West, as Jack always refers to here. Battle for Champion, an absolutely tremendous and stellar performance here, closing off the final East Cup of the spring season.
And what a way to wrap it up with a sub-15-minute Ataldazar, sending a statement that they're ready for that land. They're ready to be able to hang with the best. Battle for Champion here, 3-time #1 seed throughout the MDI East, and 2-time MDI champion here, Sowers. Very impressive.
Yeah, and they're the first time they ever actually were able to 2-0 one team or the other. So every time that Team D and Battle for Champion have faced each other in the past, it's always gone to 3 games for one reason or another. But not today. Today, Battle for Champion was just playing really remarkably, especially in this last series here, whereas Team D has had some struggles. The first pull they did in the dungeon was smaller, and they died in it. But meanwhile, Battle for Champion, they're just playing flawlessly. They had a little bit of a hiccup, I believe, with some Sanguine healing in the dungeon, but that didn't even matter for them at all. They were able to overcome like any sort of issue they had whatsoever, just absolutely blowing this dungeon apart. Really well played by them. I'm very impressed with their 2-0 here.
And at that point, we're really able to start seeing how ready they are for that LAN and how they can start comparing to some of these Western teams here, Sloot.
Yeah, it's just what I was saying. I mean, Battle for Champion to me, especially after this week, they've had some shaky games, but frankly, who hasn't even in the West? We saw Method EU have shaky games. We saw all of the top West teams have. And for me, Battle for Champion has really proven that they can hang with the top, with Method EU, everybody in the West. So I'm really, really excited to see them at LAN coming up.
Without a doubt. And with Battle for Champion taking that victory 2-0 against Team D, they seal their spot as that #1 team going forward with a very huge amount of points at their disposal. From this, they do gain 140 points and very much, as we mentioned before, solidified that spot as the #1 seed for the East. But they will be the #2 seed overall for this. So Accompany Big Money Crab getting those 40 points at the bottom, but Black Mamba, Buff War, Nerf Rogue 80-60, Battle for Champion 140, and Team D 100 here. So adding that to our regular prize pool, we get to see at the top 4 in gold for each region. Method EU, Method NA, Abracadabra 40K, top 4 for the West. For the East, we've got Battle for Champion, Team D, Buff War, and Black Mamba here on this one. So these teams are going to be the representatives for the LAN going forward on this one. And at this point, Nagura, very exciting to see that we finally know who we're going to be looking at on this one. And at this point, we got about a month for these teams to be able to practice, get themselves ready, and be able to meet us all at LAN.
Yeah, I'm just super excited to meet the players and to just see the games really, the best teams from each region just meeting up against each other. And we've been talking about the Western region just being so good, but the Eastern region, we've seen teams like Battle for Champions, you mentioned, just doing so well. And I really think that they can hang with the West, and we will see how it goes in the LAN.
Yeah, and at that point, I'm very interested in how these teams are going to match up. We know Battle for Champion can contend with the best of them, but I think the question, Sours, is to what level? You know, we've really hyped up Method EU without a doubt. They had a flawless season, never dropping a series. But I don't know if they're quite at that level, but maybe a little bit more on the side of Method NA, Abracadabra.
Yeah, it's really also LAN is a completely different environment than it is here in the Cups. So when we're playing these online Cups, teams can tune into the stream. There's no way to prevent them from doing that and watch how the other team is doing in the tournament. And then this can allow you to say, okay, we're really in the lead right now. We don't have to take anything. We don't have to play like really aggressive right now. We can kind of slow down. And we've seen this happen before where a team like watches the other team just completely fall apart and they go slower. But when you're doing it in the LAN, it's a complete black box. You have no idea what the other team is up to, so you have to play your mind out the entire dungeon, regardless of if the other team wipes or not. So it's a whole new playing field once we get there. It'll be really exciting when we see these teams in that environment.
And on top of that, it also is a completely different environment, right? You're not playing at home again anymore on your PC where everything is comfortable. Now you're playing on a stage, so maybe there's nerves coming in as well. Maybe people are playing differently just because they're nervous.
Yeah, and at that point, being able to see their teammates in person going forward, I'm kind of curious as well on the growth. We've seen 40K, for example, Sloot, has been that team in the West that's grown really the most from week 1 to week 3 here. And I'm kind of curious to see what the cap for a lot of these teams has been, because it seemed like this week Team D was kind of slouching a little.
Yeah, you actually kind of read my mind. That's what I wanted to talk about. 40K, excellent example. Black Mamba, I think, is an excellent example in the East as well of teams that have really grown. But we're now kind of transitioning and cycling out of the mentality of the Cup format and the season format, where teams are constantly under pressure every week for either a time trial, making time trials, making a statement there, seeding for that, or of course doing broadcasts. Now they just have a month-ish off, getting ready for the LAN. They can analyze their pull pattern. They can analyze other team strategies. They can practice their heart out. They can do whatever they need to do on the tournament realm to get ready without worry of a Cup coming up in the next week. So any comparison we might have of, some of the East teams might not match up with Method EU, maybe Method NA, whatever. All these teams have so much time to practice now and analyze every single team in every region's pull patterns that I think we're just going to see hugely improved teams, especially from those 3rd and 4th seeds coming in.
It'll be really exciting to see, especially because they will be playing for that $100,000 prize pool for our LAN. But this wraps up our season of MDI, the dungeon running, of course. But this is going to also make sure that next week we will be going back to the arena.